Welcome into the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast presented by Seatgeek, a podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Welcome to the Pelicans Podcast presented by Seatgeek. I am Joe Cardosi, once again joined by the adroit Jim Eichenhofer. So glad to have him once again across from me. We got some fun stuff to talk about. I know we're going to be talking about a lot of fantastical maybe situations, maybe things that might not happen, but this is the time to do it, my friend. It's dreaming time. The NBA lottery is upon us.
You said it. I think we're going to be going through some dream scenarios, but who doesn't like to dream?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a fun part of life. By the way, it is great to be back. We had a little bit of a break here before we...
which was nice, too.
Yeah, it was nice, and I feel energized. I feel refreshed. I feel optimistic.
Yeah.
I feel, some might say, adroit.
Whoa.
Yes. And you did say that. So, but yeah, we're going to have some fun with our guests, but I guess we wanted to kind of set up the draft lottery with a preview podcast today. I know a lot of people are going to be tuning in on Tuesday to find out where the Pelicans finish. Hopefully, it won't be a 5-second appearance for the Pelicans. As people know, when they open up the envelopes, they do it in reverse order. Hopefully, the Pelicans are not 14th. If the first envelope is opened and it's not the Pelicans, there's going to be some big excitement coming into the picture.
Like even if it's not 14, here's what we should say is a lot of people who may not be familiar with the lottery process. This is what Jim's here. He's the info man. People may be thinking, well, if we don't get 14, we could maybe get 10 or 11. No, you either get 14 or you get 1 through 4. That's basically it.
Right. Basically, to make a long story short, the only thing that's really determined at the lottery is the top 4 spots. That's the only thing that you can win.
Yes.
So basically, they pull up the teams. I don't want to get into too many specifics.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people.
There's just a lot of football fans in the city, I think, who are still like figuring out how the NBA lottery works.
Sure.
It is a little complicated.
But for the Pelicans specifically, they can either finish 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, or 14th. Mm-hmm. They have the best record of any team that did not make the playoffs this year. That's why they're in what I like to call the pre-lottery slot of 14. Mm-hmm. You don't want to say 14th too much because then people get confused with where they're going to finish in the lottery itself. So basically, that's what we're looking at. They have a 0.5% chance of the number 1 pick, 0.6% at number 2 and 3, 0.7 at number 4, and then the chances of them finishing 14th in the lottery are 97.6%. So you subtract that from 100, and they have a 2.4% chance of finishing in the top 4. If you think 0.5 to win it is a little bit too daunting and a little bit too much for your blood, you can look more at the 2.4% as a little bit more realistic of, they could finish in the top 4 with that percentage.
And it's a matter of perspective, man. I was looking at that 0.5%. That seems absolutely minuscule, but it's also only 1 in 200, which doesn't seem that bad. So like if someone tells me, hey, if you run blindfolded across this road, you only have a 0.5% chance of getting hit. I'm like, yeah, give me the blindfold. That seems fine. But if someone says it's about a 1 in 200 chance that you might get hit by a car, I don't know, man. It's a heck of a dare.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I think the biggest odds that any team has ever overcome to win the lottery was 1 in 66. Orlando had that way back in the day during the Shaq era back in the 90s. So 1 in 200 obviously is a little bit longer odds than that, but it has been done before that a team with what people thought had very little chance to win actually did win the lottery.
Yep, I've got my toes all crossed in my shoes. It feels horrible, but I'm doing everything for good luck right now. And it's a thing that we got to talk about. It is a possibility. The Pelicans in 2019, they only had a 6% chance of the number 1 pick. Look at that. They got that pick and got Zion Williamson. It seems like we're due to beat the odds again, my friend, because they haven't been with us the last few years.
I really like the way that you're looking at things today.
Yeah.
I really like your optimism and your positivity.
Keep betting on black. Eventually it's going to hit, man.
Yeah,
Come
I like
on.
that. I like that. The idea that, they haven't really been successful or lucky the last few years when they've participated in the lottery. So
Yeah.
this is the time. I mean, why
It
not
is.
do it in 2023? So
And what better story than a team that clawed and fought their way to try to get into the playoffs, didn't quite make it, but then somehow get rewarded for their hard work instead of these tanking teams that are just, you saw what they were doing. Again, just in my heart, it'd be great. It's part of the reason why in 2019 that Zion lottery was so fun for me. People didn't think they were in the mix for that number one pick. All of a sudden, the Pelicans had a scrappy, hard-fought season that had a lot of bad luck and a good totem there.
yeah, no, that's a good point, and I'm sure people remember the 2018-19 season was not a lot of fun. But in the last couple months of that season, you had guys like Kenrich Williams who were out there playing as hard as they could. That was not a terrible team. It wasn't a team that won 15 or 20 games and was just dreadful.
Right.
And they continued to compete in the last couple months of the season, despite what were some of the worst circumstances possible, where you have your best player
too much to overcome,
who already has 1 foot out the door. So I think you could make the case. You know, they had some good karma that they were due based on the way they finished out that season and continued to compete, at least in terms of the guys that wanted to be
the guys
here.
that were on the floor were still trying.
Right.
You know, they were still fun to root for at that point. There was just the one guy you were done rooting for.
Right.
But again, this is, I think, a good karma season. And again, we know it is very unlikely that we hop into the top 4. But we got to talk about it because it is a chance. And, man, it's fun.
It really is. And, you know, we're going to be getting into some fun with our guests here in the next segment, but I wanted to kind of briefly set up what we're going to be talking about just so people have an understanding of the kind of the bigger picture. There's 3 teams, really the top 3 teams, and I would consider this to be the top tier of the lottery, which is Detroit, Houston, and San Antonio all have exactly 14% chance of winning the lottery. The second tier in my mind is Charlotte, Portland, Orlando, that has between 12.5 and 9% chances of winning the lottery. After that, there's a little bit of more of a drop-off to the point where it gets to be a little bit more difficult for some of these other teams to win. However, Indiana and Washington are in the 7th and 8th slot. They have 6.8 and 6% chance, which is actually very similar to what New Orleans had when they won it with when they won the Zion lottery.
Right.
I guess we shouldn't rule them out.
Yeah.
And then after that, you have Utah, Dallas, Chicago, Oklahoma City, Toronto, and New Orleans rounding out the 14 teams that will be participating in the lottery.
Yeah, basically it's like a cone. The closer to 14 you are, the lower your odds get. So the fact that we are at 14 means we have the lowest odds of getting the number 1. But again, we are due and can't wait to talk about it with Todd Graffagnini and Erin Summers, who are going to be in studio here. Also glad to see them. And we're going to get into all the scenarios, the what-ifs, however unlikely they are. We're going to cover them. And then we're going to talk the practical stuff, too. So let's get into it with Todd Graffagnini, our radio play-by-play voice, and our own team reporter, Erin Summers. Joining us on the Pelicans Podcast. So glad to have them in studio again. Mr. Todd Graffagnini, our radio play-by-play voice, Erin Summers, our sideline reporter. We got to talk about all the scenarios. Jim and I sort of set it up. We know that it's highly unlikely, mathematically speaking. The Vegas odds are not with us that we're going to end up nailing this lottery and ending up in the number 1 pick, but we got to talk about it. There is an alien prospect at number 1 that is a franchise-changing prospect. Obviously, everyone's talking about him. And, you know, none of the players in the top 4 are slouches either. So, I mean, what would it mean to you to jump into the number 1 slot? What would it mean for the Pelicans to be able to do that?
Well, I mean, obviously, with all the hype with Wembanyama, I mean, it would be incredible. Now, would the luck that the Pelicans had getting Anthony Davis, of course, number 1, and then Zion Williamson a couple of years later. I mean, to get 2 number 1 picks is pretty incredible. To get 3, well, then I think, you know, Griff might get that statue out front pretty quickly if you could get 3 number 1 picks. But I mean, obviously, to get that would be almost like being struck by lightning.
Yes.
The odds are like that. But, you know, I mean, look, you never know. That's why they twirl the ping pong balls, if you will.
Aaron, I was talking about this with Jim. It is very unlikely. It's 0.5% chance. But then when you break it down, only 1 in 200. That's not that bad.
No.
Yeah, it's just how you look at it. This
Yeah,
is how you look at it.
exactly. Like 1 in 200, it's like, all right, well, okay, so you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah.
Great, love that. And that's what in one regard, you have the best record of the 14 teams that did not make the playoffs. So you're not that far off. Right. So it's not that we necessarily need a number one pick, but we do have a chance at getting one. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. It's fine, yeah.
Glass half full.
Yes, of course. And look, we're not going to sort of get into the number one pick sort of specifics because, again, those odds are quite small. But top four, it gets a little better. You got about a 2.4% chance to hop into the top four. For perspective, in 2019, the Pelicans only had a 6% chance of landing number one when they got Zion. A little better odds, of course, but still possible to land in that top four. What do you want to see them address, basically?
I think, look, we've been talking about it all year long. I just think that the outside shooting needs to improve.
Shooter?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think this is any groundbreaking stuff here. Along the lines of what we've seen Trey Murphy do in the last couple of years, we knew Trey could shoot the ball coming out of Virginia. And he is really, he started off slow his rookie year, but that was to be expected. But once he started to figure out, we saw him make that huge jump from his rookie year to what we saw this year, which is really very closely on the verge of 50, 40, 90.
Yeah.
And those are the type of players I think that this team looks to address. I think we've already done that in the draft defensively when you talk about what we've seen the last couple of years with Herb Jones and Dyson Daniels. Mm-hmm. I think now, right at this particular juncture, it is about shooting, and those are the prospects you're going to have to look at.
I think to your point too, Todd, the Pelicans were 15th in 3-point percentage, so not bad.
Not bad.
But they were 23rd in makes per game. So really, it's a matter of getting more shots up, and obviously,
what temps? What were they? Do you know?
Right. I have to look real quick.
Oh, you just put Jim on the spot.
Yeah.
Google it, Jim. Get it. I'm gonna guess and say it was.
I mean, we probably had 27 attempts.
It was 29th actually.
Yeah.
Instead of a sneaky himbo, we have sneaky Summers. Yes.
It's interesting because Willie Green just harped on it all year long. We got to get more shots up. We got to get more 3-point shots up, 3-point shots up. And, I hate saying these words, but for whatever reason, it just didn't work out each and every night. I think we saw the attempts go up, especially in the last month and a half of the season, but nowhere near what we see, obviously, when you're playing a team like Boston or Golden State, when they're jacking 50 up a game. It's like, my goodness gracious.
I mean, we could really digress here and go into the whys
we could,
because of the injuries,
correct.
CJ McCollum, thumb, etc. But yes, outside shooting would be lovely, but I think we're going to see a very different team than what we saw all last year. So it's kind of hard to gauge what our true needs are going to be.
That's a great point. And look, I think for the most part, and the numbers back it up, the Pels were a pretty solid defensive team all year long.
6th in efficiency.
Yeah, and look, that's what Willie Green, when he came here 2 years ago, we want to have a top 10 defense. That's really, this is a defensive-minded coach and staff, and they top 10 defense, you play defense each and every night, you're going to give yourself a chance no matter what you're doing as far as shooting the basketball. And when Zion Williamson plays, obviously our offense is in a much better place. So we'll just, again, have to see, first of all, let's get healthy in the offseason, everybody back on the court, and then we'll see what happens with the draft.
And
because I've seen people say point guard, a true guy that's going to bring the ball up, but you have that more when you have Zion on the court. Brandon showed that he can do that.
Still don't know what we have
Even
in Kyra,
Dyson Daniels, there are a lot more
and Jose
options.
Alvarado.
Yes. There's going to be a knife fight for point guard minutes. Well, you want a distributor. You want someone to just distribute the ball. Jose's been great at that.
I think to add to Erin's point too, when this team is healthy or close to healthy, there's a bunch of guys that are going to be on the ball a lot, and kind of you can run the offense through Zion, you can run it through Brandon Ingram. We've seen that over and over again. So even if you say you want to add a point guard, maybe it's a point guard that can shoot threes really well, and he's not necessarily just a distributor who's going to average like 8 points a game and a bunch of assists. Maybe it's a guy that one of his big pieces of his skill set or his strengths is that he can be a knockdown three-point
a healthy
shooter.
CJ McCollum?
That would be good too.
Aaron, I think we've been working too much together because I was literally going to say
that is what he is.
But that's going to get him off the ball, and it's going to take all the pressure off of him where he was handling the ball a lot more than he would normally do, and that can affect his offense at times. We've seen what he is capable of. I mean, look, he set the record for threes in a game. He made 11 of them in a game. So if you get him off the ball most of the ball game, I mean, he'll handle it every so often. But if he's playing that true two, he can just sit there and cook offensively.
And to go back to what you guys said about 3-point shooting in terms of the volume, in terms of the number of attempts, to me, it's a combination of the coaching staff emphasizing it more. Obviously, they emphasized it a ton this year. I think they made a little bit of progress, but didn't get to where they wanted to. As you can tell by the fact that I said they finished 29th in attempts, you want to be a lot higher than that. But to me, it's a combination of making sure that you just shoot more threes, but also the personnel has to be adequate to the point where they're comfortable. If you can add a guy in the draft or some other way in the offseason, it might not be through the 14th pick. It might be either the 14th pick or some way that you use that 14th pick. If you can add another guy or two into the rotation that is comfortable taking 5 or 6 threes a game, that's how you get your volume up. I mean, you can put together a roster of guys and say, shoot more threes, shoot more threes, shoot more threes. But if they're not comfortable doing it, it's going to be hard to get to where you want to go.
Well, here's the thing, too, and I know you're going to get to your last couple of points on this, but you think about a team like Boston, who, I mean, if they're not putting up 45 threes in a game, that's just way below what way below what they normally would do. Mm-hmm. There's a difference, though, in between what you're going to see in the regular season and what you're seeing in the playoffs. And a team like the Celtics, who you're thinking, all right, they've got a legitimate chance to win the NBA championship, but they have really lived and died with the three all year long, and it has cost them dearly in this postseason, especially against the 76ers, because if you live that way and they're not going in, you're going to find yourself, on the outside looking in. It happened with the Houston Rockets.
For sure. Yeah.
A few years ago when they were jacking 63s up in a game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great in the regular season, but that does not always translate to postseason basketball.
And health is crucial. And I think, Erin, you've seen it so much on the sideline. The reason a lot of this team, the reason we were saying they were stacked and they were so deep, is there's multi-level scoring. You can score in the paint with Zion. You got Jonas. You got mid-range scoring with Brandon Ingram. You've got your three-point shooting theoretically with CJ, with Trey. You've got the pieces sort of theoretically in place. Yeah. It's just a bit of tinkering, a bit of health. We talked about where we want to be in the lottery, but what we want to talk about here is we love to hate. Who do you not want to see win the lottery? There's a plenty of teams in the top tier there. You got the Pistons, you got the Rockets, you got the Spurs. They all share an equal 14% share of getting that first pick. Then you got sort of the lower odds teams. You got Charlotte, you got Portland, you got Orlando. Not a lot of teams that are easy to hate there, but. I'm going to start off with you because I want to put you on the spot there since you sort of made Jim Google those numbers there. Who do you not want to see?
Wow. All right. Okay, so, and this is just because I don't like someone to have an embarrassment of riches. And the city of Chicago right now, they had the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, although they did trade that away, but they got some great assets for it.
Draft is
they
there
just
too.
got the number 1 pick in the NHL draft. We don't need a number 1 pick in the NBA draft either.
That's a good call.
I
That's
like
a good
the
call.
creativity
Yeah,
here.
that is creative. Yeah.
So that's one. Orlando. They just got it last year with Paolo Banchero. Like, let's not give it to them again.
Yeah.
They got back-to-back number 1 picks not so long ago in 1993 when they had Shaq, number 1, and then the next year they hit on 1.52% odds and got Chris Webber.
See, it's time for us to beat the odds, and Erin's bringing my point back up. I think we're due, basically.
All right, I'm not going to go in depth as Erin just did.
I know you guys are just going pure emotions here, so I had to bring something else
and
to the
pure
table.
hatred.
That's why we need a woman here to think it out, and we're just apes going, I don't like them.
We absolutely cannot have the San Antonio Spurs or the Houston Rockets. More San Antonio than Houston, because the times that San Antonio's gotten the number 1 pick, they basically turned into a dynasty. No San Antonio, and I mean, this is a very, very low chance, very low, kind of like Pelicans-esque low. Mm-hmm. But if Oklahoma City gets it, we can't have that either. So no. basically the Western Conference. No Western Conference teams.
Pretty good blanket answer.
But starting with San Antonio.
Yeah.
I'm going to delve into the hostility that I have from years of the Spurs
The hate flow.
doing really well against the Pelicans. And I think some of the frustrations in New Orleans with the basketball team that have been created by the Spurs over the years were very evident when you look at, like, the Pelicans swept them for the first time ever this year. And there was a bunch of funny stats when the Pelicans destroyed them in San Antonio last season that were like amazing. The record in the games in San Antonio was something like 5-30.
Yes.
And I've been here for a lot of that, and I didn't even realize it was as bad as it was. So I agree, Graff. We don't want the Spurs. They've had I try to look at things a little bit in kind of fairness in the context of history. Yeah. They've been good for so long that, to me, they deserve another. They deserve another few years of being near the bottom of the league the way they have been before I would be like, okay, now I can see them getting some good luck. So they're number one on my list. I also have the Mavericks on my list of a team that I don't want to win the lottery because, I think some of it's obvious reasons. They're another team that's been really successful. I mean,
it's a good one.
I had to go with teams in the West right off the bat.
So easy to hate
because
Kyrie and Luka, too.
Yeah.
It's just so easy.
And here's another thing, too, I want to throw out. If the Pelicans win the lottery and the Mavericks don't move up, the Mavericks would bump down to 11. They have a top 10 protected pick. So the Pelicans winning the lottery most likely would mean the Mavericks lose their first-round pick as well. So there was some shenanigans at the end of the regular season. That's another reason why I don't want to see the Mavericks win the lottery, because based on what they did at the end of the regular season, they don't deserve to get the number one pick.
People?
Yeah.
It's a good call.
And you could sit here and say, like, Jim, you're making unfounded accusations. No, they got fined by the league for doing it. So
it's not unfounded.
So the Spurs and the Mavericks are my top two teams I don't want to see win.
Yeah, I was looking at it, and Erin had a good outside the box sort of opener there with Chicago, and Graff brought up a good point with Oklahoma City. But yeah, you sort of beat me to it, man. When I look at it and all the teams that have the odds, as it gets lower and lower, it is low odds with Dallas. But man, I would hate to see Dallas get it. Just having Luka, having Kyrie, and then having a number one or top 4 pick, it would just make me sick.
While you were talking about San Antonio and how good they were, I mean, you think about it, just a couple of years ago when they were still the Pop Roaches, they had DeJounte Murray, Derek White, and Lonnie Walker the fourth. Mm-hmm. They were all on that team. Mm-hmm. And now look what those guys are doing in other
making
places.
A huge impact in the playoffs.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And so, look, it's easy to hate on them. I think we all sort of agree. Like,
Jakob Poeltl, too.
Yeah, see, again, Graff is going to be up all night thinking of reasons and seasons that he didn't like the Spurs. But, I don't want to end the time on a negative note. We've talked about who we don't want to win, and I think we all agree, most people. But who wouldn't you mind? There's a few teams, there's some scrappy teams that have sort of, they've been eating some dirt for a while there. They deserve some due. Who would you not mind seeing get Wemby?
Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah.
I think they need some good things to happen to themselves. It's a great town, great arena. They've got
great mascot.
No, the fans are awesome too. Yeah, that's true. They do have a great mascot. Yeah. We met them up close and personal for many, many years.
Yep.
And again, they pose basically no threat to the New Orleans Pelicans franchise.
Right.
So I'm going to go with the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, that's a pretty harmless choice there.
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at the people with the best odds, the 14 percenters, Detroit's been there the past few years.
Well, they just got him too. Kate Cunningham.
Ago, yeah. 2 years ago they won it. Yep.
So, but they still suck.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I kind of feel like maybe
they could use a little boost.
The worst of the
Detroit's been through it too, man. They're
the
like
best
New Orleans.
of the top, because it's San Antonio, Houston, and Detroit that all have 14% odds. Mm-hmm. So process of elimination of who we hate less.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, and I've got some Pistons fans, friends who call them the Stones, the Pistones. So that would be fine with me. Jim, you got anyone with you hoping to have a horseshoe in their pocket other than us?
I don't know what this says about Graff or what it says about me, but once again, I have the exact same answer as he does on this question.
Jimothy.
Yeah.
I had the Hornets as the team that I want to win the lottery if the Pelicans don't. I mean, part of this is I think it would be so fun to see them add the number 1 pick to LaMelo Ball, great point guard who's, a pass first guy, but also can score a little bit. I just think that would be so much fun to watch. And the other reason I had on my list of notes was They actually now, with Sacramento making the playoffs, Charlotte has the longest playoff drought in the league of 7 years. They've missed it 7 years in a row. And
They've been in the play-in, though. They've been in the play-in.
Yeah,
They
that's
were in the
true.
play-in
That's true.
Last year.
True.
They got bit by the, well, again, who didn't?
Yeah, they've been
Got bit by the injury.
They've been in the
bug.
play-in twice. This was the first time that they didn't get it in this new format. But the second longest playoff drought, no one has more than 4 years in a row missing the playoffs in the entire league, including Detroit. I think they made it in 2018 or 2019. So I went with them, and I had two other kind of honorable mentions. Not to disagree with what Erin said earlier, but I had the Magic, and part of that is because I think they have such an intriguing group of young players. They have such a good core.
Tough.
And I think to add the number one pick to that would be really interesting and really fun.
Yeah.
I agree that, I mean, historically, you could make the case that maybe they've already used up their luck from back in the day. And then the third team I had was the Pacers, just from the standpoint that I just like that franchise. I think, they're obviously a small market team like New Orleans. There's just something about them that I've always been supportive of them. I feel like we've had really good interactions with their PR department. Like, it's just I know that's a little behind the
goes
scenes.
very deep.
I
But
mean, I love Gainbridge Arena.
yeah, so I think the Pacers, I would love to see them
I said the
get.
Pacers last year when we went through this,
Really?
and they're just unoffensive.
Yeah.
So it's like
Old school.
Why not?
Right.
I wouldn't mind Portland, actually. Damian
No.
Lillard is,
That can't happen. Nope.
Just for Damian Lillard purpose. He doesn't
can
want
see
to.
that.
He doesn't want
Sentimental
to rebuild.
reasons.
And he's been staying with Portland. He has stayed there as a small market guy. We
Mm-hmm.
always applaud these people who stay there for a long time. To see him get a chance to end it, at least with some hope and with someone under his wing, I think would be all right. I believe in us more than I believe in them, Todd. I think it's less that I'm just unafraid of them because I believe that we are stacked.
I admire that. And I just, again, no Western Conference teams.
Yeah,
Because
Yeah.
that
Our resident
that
nervous
Victor
Purvis.
character, that guy is he's frightening.
He's an
Yes.
alien.
Yes,
right?
again,
Allegedly, that's what
He is an
our
alleged
friend
alien.
LeBron said.
Yes,
How do you
LeBron.
say alien in French?
Alien.
Alien.
I'll have to Google that for you.
Look, I think we've gone through our love list, our hate list. We hope, of course, to win the lottery. We know the odds are small, but this is it. It's time to hunker down and start looking at the math machine. So, Graf, Erin, thanks so much for hopping on.
By the way, it's extraterrestre. That's how you say it. That's how you say it in French.
So E.T., so you can
Yes.
call him E.T.
Big old thanks to Todd Graffagnini and Erin Summers for joining us on the podcast, talking what ifs, prognosticating about the future. It's always fun to do. This is the time to do it. Jim, we were sort of talking about the times of the past. Let's break down the last few years. In 2019, the Pels only had a 6% chance of getting number one. They came in with the number 7 pick was where they were projected to be. Of course, got Zion that year. 2020, pre-lottery, 13 were our odds. Ended up getting the 13th pick. That was Kyra Lewis Jr. 2021, projected to get the 10th pick. Ended up getting the 10th pick, trading out of that, getting Trey Murphy at 17, which
Excellent
ended up being
move.
a brilliant move there. And then in 2022, we ended up with the 8th pick, which would have gone to Memphis if it had been outside the top 10. Luckily, got the 8th pick, got to keep our pick, got Dyson Daniels there. So I feel like we're due again, man. The odds are in our favor. If you keep rolling on red, man, eventually it's going to hit. I'm a roulette man, let's say. And, Jim, it's time. Let's get to it. The people are getting pumped, I believe.
Yes, they are. And one of the questions that I asked on Twitter was if the Pelicans are able to win the number one pick at the lottery Tuesday, how would you describe your reaction? So
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of go through some of the ones that we got. I have to say right off the bat, Joe, that I think your followers are a little more flavorful than mine. They came up
Yeah.
with I think your list of responses was a little better than mine.
Yeah, they're pretty
so.
verbose. That's the thing is people follow you for information. So you got a lot of GIF comments. A lot of people just a lot of sports people love to comment in GIFs. That doesn't really translate to podcasts. No one follows me for information, Jim. So I just get the sillies who I love. Because those are my people. So, yeah, some colorful ones. Let me see one of the ones we got here. Jim, of course, asked on Twitter, Pelicans have 0.5% chance of winning the NBA draft lottery on Tuesday. How would you describe your reaction if New Orleans gets the number 1 pick? One of my ats that I got, at SportsDrink, at SPRTSDRNK, I will saw apart and eat an entire igloo cooler. Which I wouldn't recommend, but I got to be honest. If we hit number 1, I'd be pouring champagne on that guy.
I think that guy's video might go viral, though. If you're able to get that on tape, I think there's a good chance that one's going to be quite popular.
And the trip to the hospital probably go viral too. What did you do? Why? But then if they're in New Orleans, they'll understand why. But I'm sure you got something of the sort in your comments.
My favorite one was from Todd_Judice. I think that's how you say it. Judice. Mm-hmm. He said his reaction would be, I will be both pumped and laughing my butt off at all these tankers losing all year and coming up empty anyways. I love that response because I feel very similarly that some of these teams that have been banking on being terrible during the season so that they can get a chance to get Wemby, it would ruin all of their plans. And for a team like the Pelicans to do it with such distant, long odds, that would be, if you like to see other people suffer, I think that would be hilarious to see like the reaction of some of these other teams.
Freud. It's a large motivator in my life. Another favorite of mine, at virile_beard, says, when you open a bag of Cool Ranch Doritos and you get one with the seasoning all globbed on it, that's a good feeling. That's a pretty good feeling, man. I had to respond. Ain't nothing better than being all globbed up on the Doritos. When you get one of those really dusty bags, that'd be pretty close.
I'm not a big Ranch Doritos guy, so I'm not sure if I'm too familiar with that feeling, but I might have to go to the store right now and get one just to see if I can experience that feeling.
Get globbed up, bro.
Yeah.
And at Babejamin wrote to me, I'm getting goofed out on Merlot, throwing on a beret and a striped shirt, and 360 windmill dunking on the Audubon Zoo giraffe with a baguette over my shoulder and 3 lit cigarettes in my mouth. Man, he's going French with it.
That's some serious specifics there, too, man.
Yes.
I like the details here.
Yes,
this is quite a plan.
The man knows how to tell a tale. He is a great comedian in this city. Go check out at Babejamin. He runs some good comedy shows. Man. So I think there's some fun stuff over there. I believe I put my own reaction of what I would do. I said I personally would be hitting the wipe me down TikTok dance shirtless as hard as my body could possibly handle in the streets, drinking literally anything anyone handed to me without even looking at it.
Wow.
Accurate.
Speaking of viral videos, that one would definitely go crazy as well. So, that's unbelievable. I really would love to see that. That would be amazing. We talked earlier in the show with the guests in terms of, what it would mean for the Pelicans to get the number 1 pick. And I meant to weigh in, but I kind of skipped over it and we went on to the next subject. But I think the hate that would come towards the Pelicans would be quite enjoyable from the rest of the league. I think a lot of people in New Orleans would be saying your hate only makes us stronger. There would be so many people upset by the idea that the Pelicans won it in 2019 with Zion and then got it again in 2023.
We would be Vader.
They would be the third time in the last 11 years that in a year where so many people were saying, like, this is the year. If you're going to win the lottery, this is the year.
Yep.
And so for the Pelicans to do that again, that would just be, it would be hysterical.
I would be cackling like a ghoul for so long. It would be a medical condition. I don't know if I would ever recover from. I would just be like the Joker, just unable to do the podcast. But again, that would be fantastic. The odds are slim. We know that. But man, it's fun to dream. And this podcast is for a dreaming for now, and it's not for information. But we'll find out, man. The draft lottery is on May 16th, 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. So you're going to want to check out what happens. Hopefully we won't see ourselves until late in that process, Jim.
Yes, I'm looking forward to this. Like you said, we understand that, the odds aren't really that great, but the most fun part of this whole process is just thinking about what could potentially be. I feel like that was the case in 2019, but at the end of that one, we actually did get the reward that we weren't necessarily expecting, but we're hoping and crossing our fingers for.
I'm just saying, if we end up in the top 4, I'm going to let out
Yeah, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. is the lottery. before a 7:30 Western Conference game on ESPN. So those are the details you need to know. We will be back with a follow-up show to the draft lottery, but only if the outcome is favorable. If the Pelicans finish 14th, we probably will not be back with the show, discussing that, because there won't be
so
a lot
much
of
that can happen,
ground to cover. But if they win the number one pick, get ready, because we will be back on Wednesday with another show.
And we will sound terrible. So just warning, if we win the lottery, we will be back croaking like death, but we will be excited. So Jim, thanks for getting through it with me. As always, my friend. Big thanks to you for listening to the Pelicans Podcast. Continue telling your friends and pals, hey, listen to the Pelicans Podcast. It's cool. Eventually, they'll believe you. The podcast is, of course, presented by SeatGeek. You can give Jim a follow on Twitter at Jim_Eichenhofer. I am over at JCar504. We will talk to you once again, perhaps soon. We'll see. But until then, go Pel!
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, presented by SeatGeek. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, or you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, presented by SeatGeek.